I've been in a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend for a couple of years. Every summer and winter break, I'm able to travel to go and see her. This encounter happened about 2 years ago at my girlfriend's house. I should mention that my girlfriend lives on the outskirts of her city in Mexico, where houses are around 200 to 300 yards apart and surrounded by dense woods. Usually, days and nights there go about peacefully, accompanied by the sounds of the woods and the occasional car passing by from others who live nearby. I had always considered her place to be perfect to spend time outdoors. That was until this occasion. Honestly, I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life. This sighting will be carved in my mind forever. On a chilly night in December, I was at my girlfriend's house. I had planned to spend the night with her since she would have been by herself that day. Her mom was out of town, and she didn't want to stay by herself either. So, we were having dinner in the kitchen at around 8 p.m. We chatted about activities we could do tomorrow, tasks her mom asked her to do, how much we missed each other, and among other things. After about an hour of conversation, we decided to go into the living room and cuddle up on the couch, just watching TV. We both got up and put the dishes in the sink. She went into her bedroom and I went outside to the bathroom. The house layout consisted of a long corridor that connected pretty much every room in the house and a back door at the end of the corridor which led to the patio. The patio was open, full of trees, plants, and other things separating the patio from the woods. There was a fence made up of stone and barbed wire that stood around 1 meter tall. Halfway down the patio, there was the bathroom, and it was being lit by a single and weak light bulb. So if anybody wanted to go, they had to walk outside, even if it was in the middle of the night. I remember when I opened the back door and stepped into the patio, a cold breeze stroked my face and sent shivers across my back. So, I hurried to go back as quickly as possible because, to be honest, I was a little spooked going outside in the darkness, knowing that the woods were pretty much a few steps away. I finished doing my business, washed my hands, and started walking back, being careful not to trip on something because the light bulb was almost non-existent. I was about halfway when I heard a noise to my left, like someone stepped on a branch and broke it. I stopped and quickly turned, trying to see what made the noise, but I could only see a portion of the fence and nothing but darkness beyond that. However, I had this weird feeling that someone or something was watching me. Something was on the other side of the fence. I stood there in silence for around 30 seconds, listening to the surroundings, and that's when I noticed the crickets had stopped chirping. I got a bit freaked out because I knew for sure they were chirping when I first got out here. I was somewhat scared to move, but I did anyways, almost running to get inside as soon as possible. When I returned, I went to my girlfriend who was already in the living room, laying down on the couch with a blanket on top. She noticed I was a bit agitated and asked me what was wrong. "Oh, it's nothing. Your patio is just scary," I jokingly said, not wanting to tell her what I felt because she hates anything that has to do with horror or scary stuff. I decided to brush it off, so I went around the couch and sat on the other end of it. I put my girlfriend's legs on my lap and asked her what she was watching on TV. I turned to my right and noticed there was a huge window on one side of the wall that gave me a perfect view of the patio. I didn't see it before because it was next to a cabinet being covered on the way into the living room. Now that I knew about it, I kept turning to see outside, still thinking how scary it looked. As we were watching a boring documentary, I took off my girlfriend's socks and started to rub her feet below the blanket. After all, it was a chilly night and her feet were cold. We didn't have a conversation. I was getting sleepy, but after around 20 minutes, I started hearing noises outside, noises that seemed to be coming from the patio. I grabbed the controller and muted the TV to make sure I was hearing it right, and I was. It sounded like tiny twigs breaking. I quickly turned to my right to see outside the window, but I could only see the plants and part of the trunk from the big tree. The noise, almost faint, stopped for a few seconds, resumed a few moments later, and stopped again. I stood frozen watching outside the window, almost as if I was waiting for something to appear. "Hey, what is that noise?" I whispered to my girlfriend, but after I didn't get a reply, I turned around and stood up a little to see she had her eyes closed and had fallen asleep. I was a bit freaked out, but I chose to believe it was probably a coyote or some other animal that lurks around in the woods at night. I kept watching the TV muted, waiting for the noise to start again, but after a while, I realized it had stopped. I turned around one more time to see outside the window, and I felt my heart sink to my stomach. The first thing I noticed when I looked outside that time was a faint image of a gray pale and tall humanoid figure. It was peeking from the side of the big tree trunk, staring right back at me. I suddenly froze in fear, not wanting to even slightly move or breathe. I watched this thing as it watched me, even though I couldn't see its eyes because of the poor lighting. But I knew it was watching me. I knew it was aware of me. I somehow felt it. The creature was, like I said, pale, really pale. I could see the contrast between its skin and the bark of the tree. The creature was very thin, had really skinny shoulders and torso, as well as an elongated neck. It looked like it was around 6 or 7 feet tall. Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, I could not distinguish in detail any features because of how dark it was, but I could perfectly picture in my head the shadowy areas around where eyes would be for a person, and a huge other where the mouth would be. It was sort of grinning. At this point, I was trembling a little, and I wanted to let my girlfriend know what I was witnessing, but I didn't want to move a muscle or break eye contact with this thing. I felt like I needed to remain still or play dead to lose its attention, but no. The creature kept staring at me, not moving an inch, like it was trying to do the same. Then, to turn things worse, the creature started to make this echoey clicking sounds, kind of like a frog, but slower. I noticed it began to turn its head to the left side and turned back to look at me really fast. I really didn't know what to think anymore. All I wanted was for my girlfriend to wake up and prove to me that this thing was real. I began whispering her name in between my teeth and mouth, not even wanting to move my jaw, but she wouldn't wake up, and the thing kept doing the same, turning its head to the left and back at me really fast. The creature crouched kind of like when a big predator cat are hunting and laying low, preparing to attack. "What the fuck?" I whispered. I know, that was stupid. I didn't even think through the fact that if I woke my girlfriend up, she would start moving, and that thing would notice us both. But to be honest, I was so scared and I kept trying. This went on for around maybe less than 15 minutes, before I realized I still had my girlfriend's foot in my hand below the blanket, so the thing would not be able to see me move. I only used my wrist, and I slightly pulled her foot back and forth, whispering her name again and again, but no response. That's when I stood in shock. when I saw the creature stand up again and started walking backwards, still looking at me. And then it disappeared in the darkness of the patio, doing the clicking sounds again. I passed saliva and blinked a few times, realizing my eyes itched from staring at the creature the whole time. For some reason, I couldn't turn my head around. I kept looking in the direction where the creature disappeared. I was listening for sounds, waiting for it to appear once again. A few minutes passed, and I took the chance to turn around, slowly, as if in slow motion. I turned my head to my girlfriend and started calling her name louder. I was pushing her leg and quickly scribbling my fingers on the sole of her feet to wake her up. Her foot jerked and she started turning. I stood up to her shoulders and patted her, whispering, "Hey, wake up." She opened her eyes and squinted at me, adjusting to the light of the TV, wondering why I woke her up. I kept telling her to remain still and silent when I heard the sound again. She looked at me, noticing the concern in my eyes, and asked, "What's wrong?" "Shh, be quiet." I followed, putting 2 fingers on her lips and looking in her eyes. I could see she was getting freaked out, and I don't blame her. I would be too if someone woke me up, looking scared and telling me to be quiet. That's when the clicking sound went off again, but it was louder this time, almost as if it was on the other side of the window. This time, both of us heard the noise, and we stood looking at each other in silence, getting more and more scared. "What is that?" my girlfriend asked, but I remained quiet. Again, in slow motion, I started to turn my head towards the window to check, and there it was. The thing was right outside the window, only a couple feet away, and staring right back at me. This time, I had a clearer vision of how it looked, and I was wrong. I petrified in fear when I noticed it didn't have a mouth where a person would have it. Instead, the mouth was on its neck, which opened horizontally, not vertically. As its mouth opened, it vibrated with the clicking sounds, and hundreds of really small razor-like teeth shined with the window glare. It had oval-shaped eyes that were as dark as night. I felt its gaze piercing through my soul. I started shaking and breathing faster, not believing what I was seeing. My girlfriend peeked to my side to see what I was looking at, and I instantly felt her body tense up under me as she started to ask me in a trembling voice what that thing was. But no answer came out of me, and now we were both scared to even move a muscle. After the humanoid noticed my girlfriend move, it gave a step forward and lowered its head, almost as if it was scanning us. We jumped in fear after seeing the thing doing it, because we thought it would start coming towards us. My heart was pounding so fast, I thought I would faint any time. Then, the thing began to slowly walk to the right side, in the direction where the door to the corridor was, while resuming the clicking sounds. If you have ever seen the movie Signs, and remember the scene where the humanoid came out of the bushes outside the house, that would be an accurate representation of what we saw. We took a good look at every inch of this thing's body. It walked with its head turned to us. After we lost sight of it through the window, we both sat up and looked at each other, when suddenly we heard something scratch on the metal door that led to the corridor, as if the thing was grazing its fingers on it. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my girlfriend's wrists and jolted out of the living room, locking ourselves in her bedroom. We sat on the floor right next to the bedroom, hiding in case that thing got inside. The scratching sounds continued, and my girlfriend started to sob, still asking about what we saw. I felt powerless, knowing I couldn't do much to reassure her. I could only hold her and hope for the thing to give up and leave. The noise continued for about 3 minutes when it suddenly stopped. Then, we began hearing footstep noises all around the house, so we kept turning to whatever direction we heard the noise coming from. Eventually, the noises stopped, and after an hour or so, we figured the creature had left. My girlfriend, still with tears in her eyes, told me if we could lay in bed. I agreed because my back was hurting from being in that crouched position for over an hour. We slowly crawled into bed, making the least noise possible and covering ourselves with another blanket. "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay tomorrow. Just try to get some sleep," I told her as I tightened my grip around her. She didn't reply, but after a while she fell asleep again. I didn't get a minute of sleep that night. I kept my eyes open, listening to every sound around us. The next day, we didn't even want to touch the subject. All we said was that creature was not from this world. My girlfriend said she felt the creature's gaze pierce into her, almost as if this thing was feeling with its pure sight. Nothing else was said. We were left sort of traumatized. I realized that she was going to have to put up with that fear of going outside in the future, and I didn't want that thing anywhere near her again, or her family. Days after the encounter, we both suffered from nightmares. She mentioned that she sometimes woke up in the middle of the night, screaming and trembling, and wouldn't be able to stop until her mom went to check up on her. The fences that separated the patio and the woods had been redone since. They now stand at 2 meters tall, blocking any access from the woods. Before this, they had to make sure they didn't have to go outside at night. They haven't had any other encounters again, but my girlfriend insists that the patio gives her chills at night. I keep wondering to myself, what was this thing? Was it a humanoid creature? Maybe. Or maybe it was an alien.